Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our Big Brother 19 live feed update for August 26th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and today I'm joined by, of course, the lovely Liana for Liana Saturdays. How you doing, Liana?
Doing well. You know, they say an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and none of the house guests picked an apple on the tree of temptation, so I'm here to do the recap.
Are you going to fix the house guests with your doctoring ability? Is that what you're saying?
I think they're beyond repair. There's nothing I can do to help them.
That's unfortunate. Yes. Well, we are here to talk about everything that happened on the feeds yesterday. And as Liana mentioned, to start the day off, the temptation tree lights up. Here we go. It's a bunch of twists ready to be plucked from the tree of temptation. And the house guests say, "No, thank you, sir." Or Madam Tree, I don't want an apple of temptation. I want to do what Paul tells me. And so nobody picks any.
Yeah, if maybe that was one of the results of picking an apple, it was like, you get to be chained to Paul for a day, or you get to be Paul's best friend, then maybe people would take the risk and try and pick an apple. But yeah, it's just like you said, nobody picked anything from the tree. And it was so funny because typically nominations are, around maybe noon Big Brother time, but because of this tree, they kept the lights on for the tree all day up until 4 or 5 p.m. Production was really hoping somebody was maybe something will happen and somebody will get excited and want to pick an apple from the tree. But no, it didn't happen. The tree was not in play this week and nobody picked any of the apples.
Yeah, I mean, I think they legitimately feel like there's no benefit to it. I mean, Matt and Raven basically know that they're going up on the block, and they don't want a double veto in play. They feel like that's a bad thing because what if Kevin wins?
Oh gosh, I know, because Kevin, the 65-year-old man who has not won a competition, is clearly the backdoor target this week.
Clearly. All right. So Paul talks to the cameras. He has a little friendship chat where he explains he threw this HOH competition, and he did it at a very particular time. He wanted to last long enough that it made it seem as though he is a good person to compete against Jason and Alex, but also allow Jason and Alex to stand out as the best competitors. And then, of course, he doesn't get blood on his hands this week if he doesn't win. So I have to say, I like his reasoning here. I think he did just the right thing.
Yeah, I actually do too. I think as far as, he mentions that he threw the comp in order to make Jason and Alex look unstoppable, put a bigger target on their back so that everyone else in the house won't feel the need to target Paul and will want to go after that pair first. So it builds the target on their back even bigger. And then, the want to keep Paul because he could be the one that could take out Jason and Alex because he did well enough in the competition that he stands a chance against them. And then, Paul demonstrated to Alex and Jason that Alex and Jason can beat Paul. So Paul's not a threat to them. So, there were a number of points that Paul laid out, shows that he's clearly thinking. And that was actually, really nice to see.
Yes. So again, I always liking when Paul tells us what his strategy is. That's basically all we've got this season. So I'm glad that he's doing it, unlike some other recent people who did well at the game. Vanessa. So next we have.
Okay, first of all, how dare you talk about Matt that way? Because Matt thinks that he can control the way Paul, Christmas, and Josh vote this week, and think that they have the votes in order to keep him this week. For some reason. So clearly he's also thinking strategy and has a really good sense of what the house is feeling and going to do.
Oh yeah, well, so basically, let's talk about. Paul talks to Matt about, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna use the veto on Raven, right? You're gonna use it on Raven. I'll use it on Raven. We need Raven in this game because Matt thinks Matt's like, oh, I don't have a chance to win this game, but Raven will win unanimously. She needs to stay in this game. Matt is fully on board with this. He then talks to Raven, and he, as you mentioned, he's basically like, yeah, you know what? The good thing is that we control the votes this week. So even if the worst case scenario happens, we'll go out on our own terms, meaning he's going to tell people to vote for him over her. And it's just like, I feel like that's the opposite of what you should want. I feel like if you go home, it should be because you did everything in your power and there's nothing left that you can do and they have to drag you out of that house. But Matt is like, no. I am in control of my own destiny. I am the author of my own fate. What was that? What was Brandon Hans
Yeah.
I'm the author of my own destiny. I don't know what it is, but Matt subscribes to that philosophy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's better than a quit, which, like, at least he's gonna, get voted out. He said he's like, I'm gonna use the veto on Raven. I don't, like you said, I don't have a chance to win. I could only possibly win against Josh. Raven will beat everybody. Why wouldn't I do everything in my power to get her to win? I really don't understand his logic. I mean, I don't think, and the house guests also agree that he's not going to talk to Raven after the show is over. I mean, maybe if she wins, that might change the situation. It's frustrating to see. And I can't imagine somebody, like Cameron, for example, who got screwed over and now has to watch this guy play the game of Big Brother.
All right. So yeah, Matt and Raven then have a conversation, and they're talking about, look, should we go talk to Jason about the nomination thing before the nominations happen? I feel like maybe we should. No, but we don't want to seem like we're paranoid. Maybe we should just let it be. Raven suggests, maybe should we ask Paul? Paul will know what to do. We should ask Paul what to do. We should just let Paul talk for us. We should just let him go up there and do all the talk. That's what we should do.
Okay, I literally have a section in my notes that say Matt and Raven being frustrating AF just in the past 24 hours. It's like, we should just let Paul play for us. That's our best strategy. We should just let Paul go talk to us. And then when Matt and Raven are discussing, whether or not they should talk to Jason, Matt asked Raven. Raven says, I don't know. And they say, maybe we should ask Paul. Exactly. What? It's just, it's so incredibly frustrating. But yeah, they're playing a really great game.
Yeah, and as Kirsten points out, Paul is always right. And that's what they said. They said, Paul has always been right, so we should just do what Paul says, and he'll get us through. And again, it's this logical fallacy of just like, well, since it's always gone this way, it always will go this way. It's like, it will always go that way until it doesn't. It's like saying, I am alive and I have always been alive, therefore I always will be alive. Like, no, you're alive until you're dead. That's what happens. You die, and then that's it. That's over. There's only one thing.
I'm sorry, what? Immortality is not a real thing? I was very misguided. It's so funny because the thing about the paranoia, I do understand that from a certain perspective. I think that Corey, for example, from last season was somebody who was like, I'm not going to get paranoid. And that actually kind of worked in his favor. He never sketched anybody out. He never freaked anybody out. They should be paranoid, right? I mean, this is a place where they should be nervous. And Raven has said, if something ends up happening and you or I do get taken out or get screwed over, Kevin's not really the backdoor plan, which is the theoretical plan this week. Raven's like, I'm ready to start World War III. And I'm like, okay, Gen City, let's see what you got when it comes to competition. Sure, you're really going to rain down on them.
Yeah. That's they really feel like okay, if Jason screws us over, the whole house is going to rally up and they're going to get Jason and Alex out next week, as opposed to what if he gets Kevin out, the whole house is going to do what? Not go after them? Who are they going to go after? You? I don't understand their reasoning here. Either way, they're the next targets.
Well, and it's so funny because, that's actually so Matt goes this week, right? The house is going to try to go after Alex and Jason, but not for that reason. The rest of the house doesn't care that Matt went home. It's because Alex and Jason are large targets and have the possibility to win. That's why they're going to go.
And the great thing is that when they do target Alex and Jason next week, they're going to be like, this was for Matt, guys. And Raven's going to be like, yes. It'll be great. Depending on your viewpoint, I guess.
Yeah, for all the 3 Raven fans out there.
Yeah. So we get this other thing. This happened earlier in the day. I didn't catch it immediately on the feeds, but I saw it on Twitter and I immediately went back and I was like, this makes no sense to me. Unfortunately, basically Alex says this one thing and then the feeds kind of cut and then we never really hear from it again until the end of the day. But she says this thing in the middle of the day. She says, look, she says to Paul and Jason, she says, look, guys, I prayed to God and he let me know that I was the vote to evict Matt. And then the feeds kind of just cut. We didn't really see a reaction to that, but it was like, what? had you been talking to Dominique too long? Like, what happened here? When did this happen to you that all of a sudden you're speaking to God and he's telling you that you were the vote? When did you know before? And like, Liana, we talked about this before the show. We don't know. We don't know if Alex actually doesn't know that she voted for Matt, or if she did and she's pretending not to like everyone, including herself. Like, what is happening here?
Right. Okay. So this has to do with the hinky votes that were cast yesterday. Jason remembers that he voted for Mark to stay in the house and for Matt to leave. We were under the impression that both Alex and Jason voted the same way and did it as a coordinated effort to do some sort of hinky vote like nonsense. But it turns out, just like what you said, it seems that Alex actually doesn't remember that she's the one who voted for Matt to leave the game, which, to be completely fair, I mix up Matt and Mark all the time. I get it. But it was so weird because after the votes, she like pretended like she knew what was happening. And I think we all believed that, yes, she knew how she voted. But then just like you said today, she talked with God, which is the DR, and which, although I agree with you, I also at first thought it was God. And I was like, are we going to get the speaking in tongues thing back? But
I know. Maybe Dominique come back in the house.
Yeah, right. That's actually the next twist. Oh, if only somebody had picked the apple. So we have this situation where she's saying this to both Paul and Jason. And I thought at first, maybe she's just lying to Paul because, we had thought that Jason and her had been lying to Paul the previous night. But she has a one-on-one conversation with Jason where she says something. She's like, tell me about your thing. And she's like, oh, no, wait. You know what? I think I actually voted the wrong way last night. Like, I think I voted for Matt to leave the game. So she genuinely seems confused. And this goes along with Alex of her she will believe whatever it is she's saying 100% and just stick with it, which is, I think, why people think that she's a really good liar, because she just believes her own lies.
Yeah, and I mean, Debbie is saying like she has to be lying because right after the vote, she went to Jason and she told him we can't tell anyone that it was us, and that's what I thought too. I think that's what all of us thought because we were like, she is clearly part of the cover up. She's trying to pin it on Jason or trying to pin it on Kevin and Raven. Like clearly she knows that she was the vote, but then if you go back, it almost does make sense that like she legitimately maybe thought that she wasn't the vote and just wanted to make sure she pinned it on the right people and wanted to make sure people didn't think it was her. And then if you pay attention to what happened, on Thursday night, she's denying it's her even to Paul. And then she goes into the diary room. She comes out of the diary room. And that's when she starts saying, yeah, maybe it was actually me on accident. That could have been a possibility, as though like maybe she went in there and they were like, so tell us about why you voted for Matt. And she was like, wait a minute, what?
I voted for Matt?
That might actually be true. Or maybe she's just like legitimately insane and like just thinks that like, okay, if I just lied to this about everyone, even including Jason, then nobody will ever know. Who knows? But this is crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's very confusing. I mean, those cat ears don't work as regular ears, so maybe she's like missing information because her senses aren't working completely right. I don't like quite know what's happening, but I do think that Alex at this at least moment is confused about the confused about the way that the votes ended up turning out, and it seems that this wasn't as coordinated as we thought.
Yeah, this was like no Natalie Anderson move here. Like, oh, whoops, did I vote for the wrong person? Or maybe it was. Who knows? We have Paul again talking to the cameras. He's suggesting that he's happy with his positioning in the house. He likes that Alex and Jason are these big targets. He's starting to think maybe I should start acting crazy so nobody thinks that I'm a threat going forward. Which I don't know if that's the best move for Paul. I feel like he's well positioned enough, and I think the main thing he has to worry about right now is jury votes, and I feel like acting crazy is not going to help him in that department. Yeah,
I mean, part of it is I think that he's bored. He stated he's like, this house was friendship at the beginning, and now it's boring. I think Paul, his confrontation with Dominique, where they were in the HOH room, Paul likes that kind of stuff. Paul likes that drama and kind of, this back and forth. And so just laying low, playing the game in a very like cool, calm and collected way is not really his MO. And I think that, you've made this comparison before where it's like, you have Derek who did his best to just quell all of the chaos. Well, Paul thrives in chaos. And right now there's not a lot of chaos going on because we haven't quite had the sides like really go after each other yet. So I think that once we get the first blow at Matt, possibly we'll see some more drama. I mean, Raven will be more insufferable than ever, which I don't know what that'll do to Paul. But he clearly is getting a little stir crazy in the house.
Yeah, I mean, people have made the Littlefinger comparisons. Chaos is a ladder. It's more show Littlefinger than book Littlefinger. They're very different.
As long as he doesn't start doing that like voice thing that Littlefinger does, of like why are you talking like this?
It is so weird, especially if you know Aidan Gillen like as an actor outside of Game of Thrones. It's like we gotta go after the Matt and Raven. I don't know. It's the worst Littlefinger impression you've ever heard. I'm sorry. Okay, so Paul checks in with Jason about the plan to use the veto on Raven and blindside Matt. So basically the plan before nominations is, all right, what we're going to do, we're going to put up Matt and Raven. Then if we win the veto, we'll pull down Raven. We'll put up Kevin we're backdooring Kevin, and then we'll blindside Matt with the vote and we'll take him out, and it'll be great. I was never a huge fan of this plan. I feel like it's kind of unnecessary to veto Raven, and you're kind of angering Kevin. I guess it does cause more of a rift between Jason and Kevin. That you probably succeed in that area, but then you have to be part of the vote to evict Matt, which is going to set off Raven, unless you plan on changing, like actually voting Kevin out, which is going to piss Kevin off. So it kind of puts Paul in a tricky situation. I'm not sure why he wanted to do this plan, but it does change by the end of the day. So they at least have that. Yeah,
exactly. So we start to see the tone change where I think Paul is kind of realizing just what you're saying, that like maybe this isn't the greatest idea. And he ends up having this conversation with Josh where, Josh, for some reason, decides to get sketched out by Alex because Alex is mad she can't play in the veto competition. And so that makes Josh not trust Alex and Jason. And so that's why he doesn't want to use it. It's a little convoluted. But the point is that, Kevin, Josh, Jason, and Paul are kind of all on the same page of, well, we don't want to actually use the veto on Raven. So if Matt and Raven go out, there was talk about trying to throw the veto competition to either Jason, who won't use it, or Josh, who also won't use the veto.
Yes. So, we get Jason, he nominates Matt and Raven, and then they pick the veto players, and it's Jason, Raven, Matt, Paul, Josh, and Kevin. As you mentioned, Josh got a little sketched out by the fact that it seemed like people weren't happy that he was picked. I feel like Jason and Alex in particular, he was like, why are they so sketched out about me getting picked to play veto? Is there like a secret plan to backdoor me going on? Do I need to win this veto? And he's a little scared about that. And then yes, as you mentioned, Paul immediately recognizes, okay, if we can all throw it to Kevin, that's best scenario possible, because Kevin will not use the veto. We can say, oh man, that sucks so much. I'm so sorry. Matt will get to play hero and say, guys, vote me out. Everyone will do what they want. Matt will think that he orchestrated the whole thing, and nobody's the wiser. Nobody gets pissed off. And Paul gets to play very, very cleanly and pull Raven in, and nobody's going to target Raven. So he's got a loyal pet for the rest of the game. So that's
loyal, annoying pet.
That's Paul's new plan. And I think it's a good one if they can pull it off. The second best person to win the veto would be Josh, he says, because he's trying to convince Josh to not use the veto as well, and he'd probably get that to happen. Also, that would be a little bit messier because obviously Matt and Raven would be mad at Josh, and that would cause some tension, but it probably wouldn't land on Paul, so that's probably fine for Paul.
Right. And like you mentioned, it was actually interesting because we had veto picks last night. And then the assumption was, oh, okay, they're going to play, another nighttime veto, but that actually didn't end up happening. So why they picked, I assume maybe that's because the veto was going to be early this morning, although I think as far as us when we went live, that hadn't happened. So it's going to be interesting to see what this veto comp is.
Yeah, and I mean, actually, we thought that the veto competition had started because the feeds went down after Christmas went into the Christmas went into the DR, and it was like, oh man, the veto competition is starting. Like, this is gonna be crazy. And then they came back, and it was just like, no. Oh. Nothing. It's fine. So yes, then we have Paul saying this new plan. We also have Jason seems like fully on board the anti-Kevin train here. Even after Paul has come up with his plan to throw Kevin the veto, he's like, no, I want to win the veto and use it on Kevin, or use it on Raven so I can put Kevin up. Like, what are you doing, Jason? Why do you want to put Kevin? Why are you buying into Paul's nonsense? Like, yeah. I get it. The thing is, he's mad because Kevin said he wanted to cut Alex at final 6, and he's obnoxiously loyal to Alex, but like still, Kevin, like at least he wants to get you to final 6, which is better than anyone else in the house.
Right, exactly. I mean, Jason has a stronger relationship with Kevin than he has with Matt or Raven. So I don't understand. I think it's one of those things that like Cody had the issue with, where it's like, if someone betrays them who's close to him, he hates that person more than someone who has never, had any transgressions against him. And so I think that this is sort of what's happening, along with Paul being, again, as frustrating as it is, Paul is really good at kind of egging things on and getting people to, really believe something as soon as something starts to fester there. And so, I think that Jason is just being very myopic and is just so frustrated because Kevin said this and because him and Kevin were close and they have their daily walks. And so, I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening. I think it's obviously not in Jason's best interest to do that. But it's possible that, maybe he'll come to his senses and not use the veto if he wins it.
Well, Paul basically says like, no, we shouldn't do this. We should let Kevin win it. That would be the best case scenario. And Jason, he'll eventually do what Paul wants. So I don't think we're in too much danger of that happening. But he mentions also that, like, if I lose this game, I only want to lose to you or Alex. Like, I'd only feel comfortable losing to you or Alex. That would be the only thing. And Paul's like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. That's why I took Nicole to the end in season 18. We're like kindred spirits here. Like, Paul is eating this up.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, if I were in Paul's position, I'd want to hear that too. I don't blame him. But at the same time, it's just like, no, don't feel comfortable losing to anybody. Like, please try and win this.
Yeah, it's like, and if I'm Jason and I'm hearing Paul say, yeah, that's what I thought too when I took Nicole to the end, I'm probably thinking, maybe that's a losing mentality then, because you lost.
Yeah, well, Jason watched what? He was in sequester. He watched season 12, 16, and 18, but then said that he essentially fell asleep and didn't even know that Paul had made final 2. Paul talks about it, I think, a lot. Maybe. Does he mention him, going to final 2 and losing? Yeah. Everyone's okay. Yeah. So I feel like it should have sunk in. Yeah. Jason should know this. Like, come on, Jason, do better.
All right. So then Paul gives the whole spiel about like, look, here's what's going on. It's best if people don't think I'm working with you because it'll put a target on you and it lets me be like an influence on other people to keep you safe. And it's like, again, if Jason, if anybody had the knowledge, and again, Josh is really the only one who's a little bit suspicious of this. Anyone with knowledge of the game can recognize that if you're telling me this, then you can be telling them this. And if you're telling everybody this, then who are you actually telling the truth to? Because it has to be only one of us. And how do I know it's me if you're telling the exact same thing to somebody else? The only way that I can know is if I feel like our bond is the best, but then even then it's like, is that in your best interest? You have to start thinking that's where Jason and Alex should be like thinking about, right? Like, yeah, they are the best competitors in the house. It is not in Paul's best interest to take them to the end. It is in Paul's best interest to take Christmas and Josh to the end. Any savvy player would recognize that obviously somebody who is good enough to be in control of the game and have everyone under their thumb. Jason even says, like, you are the kingpin of this house. Like, anybody who can recognize that should also be able to recognize that he's also smart enough to take the people to the end who he can easily beat. And Jason and Alex, you are not those people. So, like, come on.
Yeah, so one of the biggest failings of the majority of the players in the household this season is their inability to empathize and to put themselves in other players' shoes. Because Alex, for some reason, thinks that, if, like, let's say Kevin wins, he's going to put up, Paul, like, she just has these assumptions that are just so incredibly wrong. And if they took a second, and this is true of most of the players in the house, if they took a second to just stop and think, okay, if I was Paul, what is in Paul's best interest? And that never happens. Matt did it once yesterday, and I was like, oh man, it was like watching a toddler like take its first one step, but then it fell down again. I was just like, oh, like please keep walking, because he said he was talking to Paul, and he said, I feel pretty safe, but I think if I were Jason, I don't know why I would want Kevin to go home. And I was like, oh, yes, this is exactly the logic that you should be using. Please do this more often than just 10 seconds, like once, every couple of months. Like that would be really great. And so I think that is the main flaw of why people can't see past other players' decision makings, is because they never empathize and they never put themselves in other players' shoes.
Yeah. And I mean, we even see Paul at various points throughout the game being like, this can't be working. Like, this is like Paul is doing. He's like, Matt and Raven cannot be this stupid. They have to see through this. This can't be working. And then he talks to them like so many times throughout the day, and he's like, I think it is. I think they're just that dumb. Like and like if it would be one thing if Jason was talking with Paul and Paul was playing dumb and Jason was like, you know what? I think Paul is that dumb that he'd take us to the end. But he's not. He's not thinking that. He's thinking just like, yeah, well, of course. And here's the thing. And the thing that frustrates me about Jason too is that like, I think he does have the instinct to say that. I think Jason would turn on Paul, but he freaking trusts Alex way too much, and Alex is telling him, no, this is fine. He has expressed so much doubt about Paul throughout the entire game, and Alex has just continually shut it down. And now he has fallen under that logical fallacy that I talked about, where it's just like, well, everything has worked out when I've listened to Alex, and she keeps telling me that Paul is going to do good to us. So it's just like, well, I guess I have to believe that. And it's just like, bro, like, come on, Jason. I'm still waiting for him to wake up. He's still got a chance.
Sure, yeah. I think that the situation with Paul, it reminds me of when Cody tried to backdoor Paul, and Paul was just, everybody has to be on board. Cody never would have tried to put me up if players weren't there to, vote me out, if the votes weren't there. And he was just, because he would be like, who would be so dumb to just put me up on the block? And I think that this is very similar. He's just so incredulous. The fact that Matt and Raven are not suspicious, are not questioning, this in any regard. And he's just, how could they be so dumb? But then he talks to them, and you know what? It's true. They are that dumb.
Yeah. So then, as we talked about before, Alex comes in and she confirms, like, I think it was me. I think it was me that voted Matt. It must have been an accident. I'm not sure what happened. I don't even know. I don't even know what's happening in this house right now.
Yeah, neither are we, Alex. We also don't know what happened.
So yeah, I mean that's basically it. We kind of glossed over the nominations. Jason apparently made a speech that made it pretty obvious, quote unquote obvious, that he was going to be backdooring Kevin to throw Matt and Raven off. They seemed utterly convinced by it. Jason went up to Raven and said, if we win the veto, I'm going to use it on you. Don't worry about it. And she's like, yes, we're all good. And so nobody thinks they're going home this week. It's not usual that like you go through an entire week where nobody thinks that they're going to be going home, right?
I mean, it's still early in the week, so I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that somebody will pick up on something. Like somebody does have to go home at the end of the week, right? Like this is not some special twist where, somebody gets, like, you all get to stay. Although I'm kind of upset that we buried the lead, because Matt got dressed by Raven yesterday. Oh, yeah. Apparently, Matt has a ton of clothing. I saw Raven go through his drawer, dresser. He's got a ton of shirts, and he ended up wearing this maroon tank top. So clearly he owns more shirts, although he was upset, which I don't really understand. It's a tank top, so it's sleeveless. You should be happy. He ended up back in a blue shirt 2 hours later. So it didn't last long, but it was a very important part of the day.
I have a theory about this whole sleeveless thing, because you'd think that the tank top would be fine, but right. I think that he needs the
space.
Yeah, he how his orange shirt, it's basically connected at the very bottom on the side, and the rest
the slits down the side
with the side of his torso sticking out. I feel like that was the problem. The armholes were too small for him on the maroon shirt, and it legitimately it didn't look right. it was like, what am I looking at? This is not the correct. It was like, why that shirt doesn't seem like it should be on him. I don't know what's happened to me in my, like, he's incepted my brain into thinking that only those two shirts can be the things that he can wear. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, well, it's like when somebody like has a beard and shaves it off, or has hair a certain way and cuts it. You're just not used to it. I really thought it was like, oh, there's a new player in the house. Maybe this one will do better than the previous Matt that we had. Sigh, no, that was not the case. So that was pretty important.
It lasted like an hour and a half, the maroon shirt.
That's about an hour and a half, I think, is how long Matt has actually played the game. It was that one time when they got alcohol, and then the 10-second bits he has every once in a while.
Yeah, well, I think maybe what we're seeing right now is that he's actually this secret amazing player, right? And he's been doing this shirt thing intentionally because what he plans to do is, if he's stuck on the block, he's been promising that he wants Raven to stay, but what he's actually going to do is he's going to put on a different shirt, stop eating cereal, and then they're going to be like, Matt, did we already evict Matt? Matt's already gone. There's some other dude instead, but I guess we just have to evict Raven now. There's some other dude with some shirt. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see it. That's actually his master plan. He's like some sort of shapeshifter, and all he has to do is change his shirt and stop eating cereal. And all of a sudden, it seems like a totally different person.
Yeah.
Oh, and then the catchphrases that Paul is trying to incorporate, because if anyone catches feeds, I didn't see the original conversation first, and all of a sudden I start hearing everybody using the words gumpy and boys.
Yeah. Cameron warned us.
Oh my gosh. So gumpy is defined as anything, I guess, that's cringeworthy. And then boys is something that's a level above friendship. So just in case you see any of those words, they're obnoxious as all get out. They're worse than friendship and pissed, but for some reason they exist. And Matt and Raven have latched onto them like no other.
Yeah, well, I mean, as Cameron told us that Paul was trying to start these new things. I guess they finally caught on. Obviously nothing is going to live up to friendship and pissed, but he's trying. Hopefully we don't have on the next So You Think You Can podcast competition, the rating scale won't be gumpy to boys.
That's awful on so many reasons. One, because you had another So You Think You Can podcast competition, and I feel bad for all of the competitors, but also because those words are awful.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully you didn't think this update was gumpy. Hopefully you thought it was boys. But even that's weird, because it's you're not a boy. Why would we call it boys?
Well, oh my gosh, what was it that I think it was Raven who thought that the hinky votes had to be Kevin and Jason, because Mark said thanks guys. It could no one's ever used guys to refer to a mixed sex group of people.
Never.
That's so not boy.
I mean,
totally.
I just assume that when people in the chat are saying you guys, that they're only referring to me, because they couldn't possibly be referring to you, and they just think that I'm multiple people.
Is are you okay? I guess if you're a robot and then you partition yourself, does that mean you're multiple people?
Well, I'm working up toward the singularity, so I guess I am Legion sort of thing. We can make it work. Yeah,
that makes sense.
So that's basically the update for the day. Unless we have anything else, Liana, or any questions in the chat, let me know. This was a fun one, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow at noon Eastern to update you on everything going on the feeds today. Probably be talking about the veto and what happens there. So that'll be fun. Make sure you tune in on Tuesday to the Taran Show. Speaking of So You Think You Can podcast, I had Melissa Denny on to talk about herself, her experience on So You Think You Can podcast, because what a crap show that was. So
much fun.
And of course, we'll be live on Monday morning to do the Sunday night recap. Rob is in Salt Lake City, and that combined with the Game of Thrones finale, there's a lot going on Sunday night, so we're going to be doing that on Monday morning. That will coincide with the update. We'll kind of combine those two things, so make sure you tune into that. It'll be a lot of fun. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next time.